Hey everybody, my name is Kevin Pira. I am a certified financial planner, and today I am answering some of your questions as our channel just passed 1,000 subscribers, which I want to give a huge thank you to all of you out there who have subscribed and are watching our channel. It means a whole lot to me, especially since this channel has only been posting for about 2.5 months now, and we've already crossed 1,000 subscribers. That is just crazy. So thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. And so we're going to go ahead and answer some questions that you guys have. Our first question is, how did you begin your career as a CFP? So I became a certified financial planner professional in August of 2025. There are a few requirements that you have to meet to become a CFP. One of the biggest ones is that you have to have around 4 years of experience of full-time financial planning. I think it's about 6,000 hours of financial planning experience to be able to earn the designation. Of course, there's other requirements too. So you have to have a bachelor's degree. It can be in any study. Mine was in financial management. So if you do want to become a CFP, it doesn't have to be in like finance or economics or something like that. It can be in, I think, anything. So you have to have the bachelor's degree, and then you also have to, of course, have the experience requirement, which for me was 6,000 hours. And then you also have to, of course, pass the exam. And the exam is pretty grueling. It's a 6-hour exam. And you have to, leading up to that, study for it and pass the coursework, which took me about, I think, 9 to 12 months. Some people do it quicker than that, but that's the pace that I did as I was doing self-study. So before I became a CFP though, I started my own wealth management firm, Pira Wealth Management, when I was 21. And I started that because I was obsessed with financial planning and personal finance, and I loved helping people. So, I tried to combine the two, and I was like, hey, why would I go work for, one of these other companies when I've always had that entrepreneur bug and I wanted to go do it myself? So that's what I did. And it was a pretty risky thing to do because, I was obviously very green when I started, and there was a lot of things I had to learn. And starting off your own wealth management firm is not a very easy thing to do. It's, of course, a very, very highly regulated space, which it should be. Maybe a little too over-regulated in some instances. And, all of those things play a factor when you're trying to start these companies. And, coming from my background, I didn't have really the financial resources to be, hiring these securities attorneys to put together the company. So, it was a lot of Googling and figuring out, okay, how do I start this company and all of that. I think nowadays would be a lot easier with like ChatGPT or something if you wanted to start a company like this. But, the legal term for pure wealth management under how the regulators call it is a registered investment advisor. That's what the business is called. That's the legal entity. And it's also, of course, an LLC. And then I am an investment advisor representative. So that would be the people who are actually giving the financial advice. That's the legal classification. A lot of times you'll hear the words financial advisor. That's not really a regulated term here in the US. Investment advisor representative, those are legal terms from the actual laws here in the US. So to answer your question, I just kind of went into it on my own. I didn't really want to work for another firm because I just didn't think that they were doing it the right way. I've heard so many stories about people having issues with their financial advisors and of course all the other issues in the financial services industry. And, I was like, I'm going to try this by myself. And I've definitely learned a lot of good things from compared to then about starting this type of company. And my shift, I've definitely had a perspective shift because, when I first started, I was really into like the trading and the investing side of things. I was like, oh, it was almost like I wanted to start like a hedge fund where I wanted to pool this money together from these people, and then I wanted to go invest it and try to outperform the market. Reality hits you pretty quick and you start learning more and you realize that's not really the way things work for 99% of how the businesses are run out there. Usually you need to provide good financial planning. That's where the alpha is for clients, not from you trying to outperform the market. So I kind of was like, oh, I want to start my own hedge fund. Which again, if you have a bunch of rich friends or family, that would work. But with my background, I come from a very, very humble beginnings, and I definitely didn't have any extra funds lying around to be investing. So, really my background stems from an obsession of personal finance because I was actually raised in, pretty bad situation, money-wise. So that's where my personal finance obsession kind of started, and then it kind of stemmed to wanting to help people make a business of it. But it's definitely evolved over time. And then I became a CFP last August from the experience and meeting all the testing requirements, which are pretty brutal. We have, are you flat fee based? And the answer to that is yes. So if you don't know, there's a few different ways financial advisors get paid. They can get paid through like commissions. They can get paid through a combination of commissions or a flat fee, hourly, or assets under management. There's a few different models out there. And so when I set up my company, I was like, I want to do this in the right way. So I've always been a fiduciary. That's, check that box when I first started the company. For my billing for my clients, I have two choices. I usually do either an assets under management, so we will take a percentage of the assets we're managing on an annual basis from the client, or we're going to charge them a flat fee depending on the complexity of the relationship and the services rendered. And so I kind of lead it up to the clients. I talk to them. I explain the differences, how each one's going to affect them in the long term, and the different services that we can offer. And then we work out what would be the best fee arrangement for them. And so I think having a combination of the AUM and then the flat fee, which again is just a flat fixed rate, whatever it is, and people like that flexibility because some people don't want to be charged an AUM fee. Both an AUM fee and the flat fee are both what we would call fee only. So the fee only category is its own little separate thing. And then there's fee based. Fee based is a combination of fee only and then usually some type of commissions or something. So there's quite a lot of different ways that financial advisors can get paid out there, but I think how I've set it up is in the best interest of the client. And that's something I pride myself in, is trying to do what's best for the clients. And that's how this whole firm got started, was how can we make this a better experience for people, not for profits. So we got a question here. I'm going to read this one off. It says, what's the case for hiring a financial planner? I've set up and automated my investments and my retirement accounts on my own, so I don't really understand at what point or specific purpose you'd want to consider getting a financial planner. I don't mean this in an antagonistic way, just trying to understand better the role of a financial planner. Yeah, it really is a great question. So one of the biggest things that stand out to me is complexity. As you earn more money, as your net worth increases, your family size increases, these things all bring complexity. Your tax situation, estate planning, all of these things, maybe when as those increase, you may want to have a financial planner in your corner to work on those things. There's kind of this big misconception out there, especially I see on YouTube comments a lot, about a financial advisor and a financial planner. So if your advisor is just helping you with just selecting the right investments to invest in those cases, it may not be worth to have a financial advisor, especially if you're somebody who's very much so emotionally capable of handling big downturns in the market. Because that in itself is where a lot of just financial advisors provide alpha, is people make really big mistakes when the market's down. So if you got that covered, then you'd want to think about things like the bigger picture. So tax planning, estate considerations, just on the tax side, there's so many things people can optimize and do better. And that's where we work with, CPAs and things like that to really, get it done correctly. But don't overlook the investment side of it. The investment side of it can be very simple, and I do think simple investing works very well. But when you have a business, when you have kids, when you have all these different retirement accounts, self-employed, this gets complex. And you can definitely do it right, but can you do it almost perfect? That's where a financial planner may come in and provide that extra alpha. There is a study out there called Vanguard's Advisor Alpha, where basically they looked at, hey, is a financial advisor worth it? And I think they found like a 2 to 4% alpha when someone's working with a financial advisor versus DIY. It may be worth looking into that study. That doesn't mean that study applies to everybody or that it's, the word of God or something. It just means that there are some situations where it can make sense for people to have a financial planner. So I would say complexity, as your net worth increases, there can definitely be some cases, but if you're comfortable with where you're at and you're like, I'm just doing a simple investment strategy, I'm just putting money into this account, it's growing, I don't really have anything else I need to optimize, no college savings, no tax planning, retirement planning in itself is a huge thing, by the way, then you probably are good. But a lot of people who are going into retirement, you only got one shot to make retirement right. So they want to work with somebody who makes sure that they're going to do it right. Because there's a lot of things in retirement planning that people can overlook. And the last thing I would say is, and I mean this, with all much respect as I can, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I can tell you that as a financial planner, there were so many things I didn't know until I became a CFP that I was like, wow, I can't believe I was, doing what I was doing without knowing that. So, there may be some things that a CFP, can help you with that you may not be aware of. We have a question here. What is the required schooling to become a CFP? And can you land a role that doesn't require being a salesman? I've thought about a career transition to this field, but the thought of being forced to upsell clients a crappy set of mutual funds with high expense ratio is not what I have in mind. You actually sound a lot like me when I was younger. I kind of had this mindset where I was like, I don't want to do anything like that, which again is painting a very broad brush because there's so many different types of financial planners really out there. There's people who work at banks. There's people who work at companies that are like mine, like the registered investment advisors. Those type of companies, the registered investment advisors, how my company's set up, I think you're far less likely to deal with somebody trying to sell you on high fee mutual funds. In fact, most firms that are set up like mine, they don't sell any products at all. They're the fee only category. So they get paid from the client, not from a kickback from a financial product. If you're trying to apply it to like an insurance company or a bank, that's where I would steer clear, and I don't think those people may not be getting the best financial advice out there. But the required schooling, yeah, you have the bachelor's degree, the experience as a financial planner, giving financial advice, take the grueling exam and then the coursework, and then some ethics and continuing education, of course, too. So again, if you want to become a CFP, I would say work for a registered investment advisory firm. That I think is the most ethical way to do it. But also don't get so focused on the investment side of it, because the investing side of it, what a CFP does is just one slice of the pie. We do comprehensive financial planning. We look at the big picture, not just what investments should we get you into. And how I have it set up at my firm, I use low-cost index funds, and I can't speak for other firms, but I don't think a lot of firms actually that are set up like mine use high-fee mutual funds, because a lot of them are actually paid on the fact that, again, some people are going to disagree with this, on the AUM structure, so they would want more money in that account over time versus less money. But again, it really depends on the firm, the fee structure, and just getting to know the specific people working there. So it's a good question. And I think the financial services industry here definitely could learn a thing or two, especially on the insurance and bank side, about the high fee stuff, which I think is bad for clients. And that's why I set up my own firm too, because I didn't want to deal with that. So I'm in your same boat. Next question. I have some questions about your experience with earning a CFP certification. What is the experience of getting it like, and what do you recommend getting it for somebody who's looking to improve their own knowledge of personal finance? So the CFP, I'm not sure if you can actually earn the designation unless you are getting the experience of financial planning through a firm. There are some other ways to get that experience requirement. I believe you can do, like if you teach college financial planning courses, financial administrative stuff, you might be able to get that experience requirement that way. And if you can, I totally would get it, because the CFP is the gold standard for financial planning. There really is no doubt around that. And for me, the test was the biggest part. I was earning experience from my own company at Pira Wealth Management, but the hard part was, studying, taking all that time and devoting it to, the coursework and then the exam. And I want to say the exam really is no joke. It's 6 hours long. It's grueling, and it tests you on a lot of different subjects. So don't sleep on the experience requirement, but the coursework and the exam is very tough, and that's what is either going to make you pass or fail to become a CFP. And also, just so you know, when I'm talking about these requirements, you don't have to do them in order. You don't have to get a bachelor's degree first, and then the experience, and then take the exam, which is what I did. But you can actually do it sort of out of order and then earn the designation afterward. So keep that in mind. This question says, congrats on 1,000 subs. Thank you. Looking back, what would you say were some of the most memorable obstacles you've had to overcome when starting your channel and growing it to the point that it's at now? And what advice would you have given yourself in the past to set yourself for overcoming them easier? So again, really, fortunately for me, I've only had this channel for uploading for 2.5 months now, so I can't really say I've overcome too many challenges yet. I think the biggest thing is really the consistency's been not tough, but just something that I have to stay up on top of. And again, I actually really do enjoy making these videos though, and the shorts. So for me, it's been fun so far. And again, I wouldn't be a CFP if I wasn't a bit of a personal finance nerd. So this stuff is sort of second nature for me, fortunately. But again, not too many obstacles. When you are a registered investment advisor like me and you're licensed, there are a lot of state regulations and federal regulations that apply to you, even when you're talking on the internet. So there are some things I do need to be careful of. So there's the regulation side and then the consistency side. I think those are the biggest two factors for me, but overall it's going really well, and I can only hope that it keeps doing well. Next question, what are some topics that you plan to get into for your channel moving forward? Really anything personal finance is open to be discussed. Retirement planning is a really big thing that I want to dive into because professionally that's a very big part of what I did. The CFP exam I think was like 22%, 25% of it was around there was a retirement planning. Maybe it's like 18%. So, I definitely have a lot of expertise in that subject, and it's a very crucial part of, a retiree's, pre-retiree's life is going into retirement, of course. So definitely want to discuss that. I love doing reaction videos because it's just fun to just listen to how somebody else interprets something versus how I interpret and just go over some of the nuance there. But really anything personal finance is open game. So as always, definitely willing to hear, your thoughts on what are some things that I should, record on, but really anything is open for discussion. Next question, what is your most controversial take on finance? So, being a CFP, I feel like I'm pretty well-rounded when it comes to this stuff. I don't have anything that's too crazy out there. The biggest thing for me is probably that anybody, especially here in America, can do well financially if they have the right knowledge and, they have the right opportunities. And I think when those things intersect, that's how people can become so financially successful in this country anyways. And, I really believe that anybody can do it if they just have the right, knowledge in their head. And of course, the will and ambition to get things done. So that probably is my most controversial take. Outside of that, I would say anything to do with like high interest debt. I don't think high interest loans, anything probably above 15% should be legally allowed. I just don't feel like that is something that should really even be allowed in our country and in the world. I just feel like it just takes advantage of people and takes advantage of people who aren't financially literate. So ban high interest debt. Next question. I have a Roth that is 100% allocated to FSKX, which is a US total market fund, and a brokerage account that's 100% in VT, which is a world index fund. Is this an appropriate allocation setup? Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of low-cost index funds, mutual funds, ETFs, and, again, what your specific risk tolerance is going to be hard for me to tell you. One, because you're not my client, so this is just basic advice. And two, because I don't know your big picture, financial plan. And the things that we aren't mentioning here, your age is one of the biggest factors, your income, your other, factors in your financial plan. So in terms of index funds, I like low-cost index funds. I usually like to have like a low-cost US total market index fund, and then I like to have some international in there as well. So I think how you're doing is fine. I think, worrying too much about your exact allocation isn't going to make a big change. If you change it a little bit, probably not. I think you're mostly pretty well optimized. But again, this is going to depend heavily on your risk capacity, your risk tolerance, your age, your income, your family situation, a lot of other things like that. But those are very good funds, I think. Next question. I've been seeing videos lately that I should tilt towards something like tech, such as VGT or FTEC, FSKAK, the US Total Market Fund, holds all of these funds. Wouldn't it be unnecessary overlap? I don't think you need to really tilt towards tech. For some reason, a lot of people on YouTube talk about tech because it's done well in the last few decades or whatever. Is it going to keep doing well? I can't predict that, and I wouldn't try to. Do you need a tilt if you already have a total US stock market fund? Probably not. An S&P 500 index fund and even a US total market fund is naturally going to have a ton of tech tilt already in it because the biggest companies are like Apple, Nvidia, Google or Alphabet, Microsoft, things like that. So it's already going to have a tilt in it. Should you go more than that? Personally, I don't really think so. Sure, you could do it and maybe outperform the market in a sense, but you're taking on more risk as well, and we don't know what the next decade or two is going to look like. So I'm not a really big fan of going any further into tech. If anything, the question should be, should you try to lessen the tech because the tech is becoming such a big part of like the S&P 500? But no, I don't think you need to do that really. Next question. A lot of finance YouTubers don't really talk about this, but would having a pension in addition to Social Security cause you to modify the conventional YouTube finance advice around Roth, 401k, HSA, safe withdrawal rate strategies? I mean, I don't know what the conventional wisdom is there on YouTube, but personally, yeah, it would make a difference, right? So if you have a pension, we have income coming in retirement, that's going to modify how much you can take out in retirement. And of course, Social Security also takes a big, play into that as well, a big factor into that as well. So as a financial planner, when I work with somebody, I have some very good financial planning software. We plug everything in and we see, well, if you did take Social Security, at what age, how does that affect your plan? If you have a pension in there, how does that affect your plan? And from there, we can determine, well, what is a safe withdrawal rate for you in your specific circumstances? So yeah, I think it does matter because you are changing the numbers by having a pension, but I don't really know what the conventional advice out there is. And I would just be a little careful about taking general financial advice when your specific situation is unique. Because, if you have a pension, you already, have a different situation than a lot of people out there who don't have a pension. So keep that in mind. I wish I could answer it more clearly than that, but yes, I think it is going to make a difference. Next question, what are some of your personal interests? So outside of personal finance, some personal hobbies, some weird ones. I've enjoyed bird watching. I really am into like survival camping type videos and like trying to replicate that. For many years now, I've gone like hardcore camping with very little gear and just try to like rough it out there. That's always been fun to me. So, I've always been a big fan of shows like Survivor Man and Alone. I've always loved watching those type of videos. I do a little bit of gaming. So, right now I'm playing The Long Dark, which is a survival game, of course. I live in the Midwest, so it's cold, it's snowy, and it's dark right now in the winter. So I go ahead and I replicate that in some of my gaming sessions as well. And then outside of that, hanging out with my girlfriend and my cat. And I, of course, love traveling. My favorite place I've been to is Japan. I've been there a few times now, and I'm very excited to go again, hopefully later this year. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. We just passed 1,000 subscribers. It means the world to me. So here's to the next 1,000, and here's a goodbye from my beautiful cat Chubbs, almost 16 years old, and I think he's ready for me to let go of him. Bye.